Thank you, Anya. And indeed, I'll be presenting a part of my, I would say, my most popular keynote, which is called "The Patient is No Longer Patient." And I will indeed focus on how can we shift from patient services to patient engagement. And in that way, I will present to you two tips and tricks that actually will help you create those patient engagement. I've been introduced. I actually call myself a health marketeer because I work in marketing most of the time and in different industries, but always in and around health. I've worked indeed with most of the pharmaceutical companies out there in over 25 different countries. And basically what I've done in the past 2-3 years was I actually bundled my knowledge and my experience from working with all those companies into this book. And this is why it kind of ties really well with what you were saying earlier, because what I'll try to do with this book is to try to bring pharma into the outside world, an outside world that is radically changing, as we just saw. But I also try to introduce the outside world into the medical world or into the pharmaceutical world. It's a book that is actually for all sorts of companies, for all sorts of managers, but it's certainly liked a lot by pharmaceutical companies. It's even considered one of the mandatory readings for capability buildings in companies, or even a very inspiring book to identify the right solutions for patients. Now, enough of the promo. What I really want to talk about and what the book is actually really about is that we should stop looking at healthcare as it is today, because I don't like the word healthcare. Actually, I've been stopped using it, or at least I avoid using it in the past 7 years, because it's too much of an on-off switch, if you will. And what we see is that people are considered focused on their health when they are in the system, and then the switch goes on, and they are not focused on their health when they are out the system. That's why I don't really like the word healthcare. Actually, I prefer the word health enthusiasm because it actually shows how people are not just occupied with their health when they are sick, but also when they are trying to be happy. And we can see this in the amount of action, the type of actions that people over time have actually taken to impact their own health and happiness. And I presented this slide when I was launching the book in London 2 years ago. And what I predicted on stage back then was saying, like, in 2020, most people will be occupied with their health. Now, I couldn't have predicted what has happened in 2020, of course, but it was a bit of my Nostradamus moment. But the thing is that this trend, this health enthusiasm trend, actually shifts the entire healthcare industry. Because very often what we see is that our core beliefs is that the physician, the healthcare system is at the center of it all, and that patients just flow around the physician. But we are actually seeing a Copernican health revolution today. And this revolution puts the patient actually at the center. We talked about patient centricity already during one of the keynotes today, but it's really that important. Physician remains important for a patient, but he has a lot more options to choose from when he is managing his or her health. And that really changes the way that we look at patients, because we used to look at patients or consumers, and there was a lot of discussion going on is a patient a consumer, is a consumer a patient? And very often what we said is that it is not the case, because consumers, they look at lifestyle decisions, and patients, they look at medical decisions. But more and more we realize that patients and consumers are actually the same person, right? Kind of makes sense. And they are just in some situations a patient, and in other situations a consumer. Nevertheless, in each of these situations, they take multiple type of health related decisions. That could be medical decisions, health related decisions, well-being decisions, or even lifestyle decisions. And this is what health enthusiasm is really all about. It's the fact that regardless of whatever situation we are in, we as human beings, we are occupied with our health. Every one of us wants to be healthy and happy. And it's been really dramatically more important in the past couple of years, and not just because of COVID. Because look at how the research, the searches on Google, the relative searches on Google for self-care has grown in the past couple of years. It's literally doubled in the past 2-3 years. And the whole business of self-care and wellness is a 4.7 trillion business. 4.7, that means it is 4 times as big as the pharmaceutical industry. And it's almost as big as the entire healthcare industry in the world. That's how important self-care and wellness is today. And so one of my main statements always is that we often say in healthcare that people aren't engaged enough, but it's totally wrong. I think people really are engaged, and they don't need to be engaged as we think they need to be. In fact, if they aren't engaged with your products or service, well, it's entirely up to you. And so today, what I want to do is give you exactly 2 tips that will allow you to create better engagement, that will allow you to engage your patients with your products and service. And the main thing behind it is that you need to have engagement. You need to have engagement by creating value. Value creation is the most important thing. And what we believe in the healthcare pharmaceutical industry is that this is our value. We bring a pill, a medication, and we are so convinced that this is our value. But the main mistake that we are making is that if we make products or services, we only look at the needs of people. And that is not enough. We need 2 more things if we really want to engage our patients. And one of the things is we need to understand their expectations. So what is this about? Let's have a look at how the gym industry, the fitness industry evolved in the past years. This is a product. It's a dumbbell. You can buy this. It doesn't cost a lot, probably like 10, 12 euros for one. You can keep them at home and you can work out. What we've seen over time is that the fitness industry, they already bought it for you. It's a service. You can go there and you can go and work out. There was a time like 10 years ago where a gym membership would have cost you 100 euros a month. Today, it only costs 20 euros. Why? Because there's so much offering today and there's hardly any differentiation. So the prices go down. There's no value anymore in just the fact that there is a gym. And so we saw something else happening then. And we didn't only shift to gyms or to fitnesses, but the fitnesses itself, it shifted to what we call spinning classes. And just to go to one spin class actually costs almost as much as your entire membership for a month in a fitness. So how does that evolution goes? Why does it happen that way? Well, the thing is that if you want to create value, you need to differentiate. And at a certain point, when it's hard to differentiate, you start customizing things. Products become services and services become experiences. This is what we've seen in the fitness industry. This is what we've seen in basically any industry. And if you ask patients today, health consumers today, they will say, 92% of them will say that customer experience is really a top strategic priority for all healthcare providers, including pharma, that is, of course. Because we should stop thinking that, focusing on customer needs is enough to engage people. We need to go to that customer experience. And if we want to get there, we need to focus on what I then call the customer expectations. Customer expectations is hypocritical. And I really loved how Pfizer a couple of years ago, actually in 2020, just before COVID, did this patient hackathon, which in my understanding was not focused on a particular disease. It was focused on what are the expectations of patients overall. That is how important it is. And in my book, I describe 12 different expectations who are very common, who actually are shifting a little bit even, but 12 different expectations who are very common in the healthcare setting. And we don't have time to go a lot into detail, but let me just briefly touch upon one thing. That is, we see a shift, or at least a need or an expectation to have information, but we also see it shifting towards having more support. We also see this in the world around us, because expectations is driven from the experience that we have in other industries. Look at how Google used to give you only information. You would ask Google a question in their search machine, and it'll give you a list of potential information, a list of potential information options even. While today, if you look at how the Google Assistant is working, and a lot of smart speakers are working, is they will give you an answer. So it's not just information they provide, they will even give you an answer. Sometimes they will ask you a question or give you an answer before you actually ask it yourself. And we see this more and more happening in healthcare as well, which is great. We want to understand what the expectations are of people. And for that, we look at the different experience that they have in their lives. MedPill has done this really wonderfully. What they've done is they want to guide people when they have to go through surgery. Because you might have a brochure with all the information in there, but they offer a lot more. They have a personal care advisor that guides you through it, that gives you the right information at the right time. information, options, support you might have. They can get you in touch with their own physician online, or they can even give you some aftercare options. Anything to make the expectations of people in line with the expectations that they have in the other parts of their life, because that is where we are lagging behind in healthcare. And so I have about 12 of them, which I then use with my clients to really define what is most relevant. And the way that we do it is we look at the different patient journeys, and we look at each of the specific moments and what expectations people might have. But we also look at the overall expectations that people have throughout the journey, because that is how you engage with patients. This is how you do it. And I really love this example. This is Born Riget at a children's hospital in Copenhagen. And what they've done is they've worked with hundreds and hundreds of patients, children, but also the caregivers, the parents, and all the caretakers. So all the providers of healthcare in that hospital. And together during months, they actually analyzed 100 different pathways, 100 different patient journeys, and they designed the entire hospital around those expectations in the specific patient journeys or patient pathways. So it's all about expectations first. If you really want to engage your patients, you need to create value, and that you can do by taking into account the expectations that they have towards what you bring to them. That is what value creation is all about. But let me just build on it, and let's have a look back at the gym and the fitness industry, because we've seen a shift going from, again, the fitness bikes to something new now in the past 2-3 years, and that's personal coaching. And why is personal coaching today that successful? Why is it that important for anyone who wants to work out? It's because it takes into account the aspiration, the health aspiration of a person. It will listen to you and listen. If you want to have more energy throughout the day, it will build the exercise to that aspiration. If you want to look better, lose some weight, or if you want to recover from something, it will make sure that you have the right training specific for your aspiration, let's say. The same goes for this solution, which is Patient Partner. They also guide patients throughout the surgery process, but they don't just look at the process, the information, the options, but they will get you in contact with a patient who has gone through that same surgery just the year before or a couple of months before. And why do they do that? Because they want to help people with their aspirations of, I want to accept the fact that I'm getting surgery. I want to avoid stress, or I want to feel safe throughout the entire process. So it's not just about the process, but it's about what people aspire to during that process. So it's really about getting into that next level of value creation. And I loved how you mentioned the impact transformation. I often talk about customer transformations, because indeed we are getting to that transformational economy, the economy that is driven by the transformations that people desire. And to actually get to that transformation, those customer transformations, my second tip to you to really have that value creation is to focus on aspirations, because we know now how to build customer experience, right? You need the needs of customers. You need to understand what they expect. But if you really want to get to that customer transformations, you need to have the customer aspirations available. You need to understand what that is really all about. And there again, I've identified about 24 different aspirations that are valuable for your patients or for humans in general. And that if you can work on that specific ones, that specific to a certain situation, to a particular person, then you will create, again, value. Because aspirations are more and more important. Our basic needs, our social needs are more and more fulfilled these days. They are met. And so people are more focused on our own aspirational needs. We want to become the best possible version of ourselves. People are aspirational. So that's why very often, if I work with pharma clients, I just say, just stop focusing on efficacy, tolerability, and safety only. Obviously, just include the patient centricity part, but even go one step beyond. Just look at what the aspiration is. What makes people healthy and happy, and how can you actually contribute to that? If you look at epilepsy, this is from one of the previous work I've done. If you look at epilepsy or patients who have epilepsy, well, one of their aspirations is feeling safe. It's about also accepting the fact that they have a progressive disease. So anything that you do, all the communications, all the solutions that you bring, it should be focused on those two aspirations. If you look at Crohn's disease, people sometimes just don't leave the house because they are afraid to have an attack and maybe have to run to a toilet. But still, they want to have those meaningful connections with others. They want to travel. They want to go into nature. And for that, they really need to prevent pressure, have no stress. How can you help them avoiding stress? And how can you help them really enjoying those moments when they go out? Well, let's look at the most obvious one and the most well-known one, maybe. That's diabetic patients. They are looking for an optimized energy throughout the day. And they are really looking for proper protection so that they don't get any low glucose moments. And so compared to the expectation focus, expectations really looks at each part of the customer journey and even at the customer journey as a whole. Aspirations goes way beyond that. It's not just about the journey. It's about what is important in their life. What aspirations do they have related to their health? What do they want to achieve? And that is really what I also recommend, is that don't just look at the needs, but also look at the expectations and the aspirations. And to wrap it up, the patient is no longer patient. This is what I always open up with most of the keynotes that I bring in pharmaceuticals. And the fact is that patients are actually health enthusiastic. They are indeed occupied with their health, even when they are not sick or when they are not healthy. They look into medical related decisions. They are taking lifestyle related decisions that have an impact on their health as well. So people are engaged. That is for sure, more than ever before even. So the question is, how can you engage them with your products and services? Well, it's about creating value. And this is the most important slide if you think about creating value, is that how can you go from products to services? How can you go from services to experiences and even to transformations? Where there's three words you need to remember. It's needs, it's expectations, and it's aspirations. If you have those three in your solution for patients, you will have that engagement for sure. And so if you combine even, and this is the tricky part, but even also the huge opportunity here, is that if you combine both of these models, then you can see that pharma today is very much focused on products, maybe services, and the medical sphere. And so they are looking to maybe go into a little bit of, experiences. But if you understand this model really well, if you understand how people go about their health, what type of decisions that they are taking, whether it is health or well-being or lifestyle, and what their expectations and aspirations are, you can have a lot more ambition and you can mean a lot more for your patients. And that is how you will engage your patients along the way. My name is Christophe Jauquet. This is the type of work I do with clients. If you like this type of content, just go to LinkedIn, Instagram, or subscribe to my newsletter. It's a 2-weekly newsletter where I explain all sorts of cases that fit in this health enthusiasm world, as I like to call it. I thank you for your attention.